Welcome to This Explainer. If you've ever stood out in your yard watching a favorite plant wilt away in that brutal July heat despite watering it every single day, well, you know exactly how incredibly frustrating it can be. Today, we're diving into a master gardener's guide to keeping your garden perfectly hydrated. And the best part? We're doing it using zero-cost hacks and skipping those super expensive drip systems entirely. We're going to look at exactly why your plants dry out and how you can fix it using the science of your soil and a few things you probably already have sitting in your recycling bin. All right, let's just jump right in with a really quick test. Tomorrow morning, I want you to go outside and water your garden exactly like you normally do. Take your time, do your usual routine. Then, just walk away for 20 minutes. Finally, come back, kneel down, and push your fingers straight into the soil, all the way down to the second knuckle. Now, if your finger comes up bone dry, well, it's a harsh truth, but you need to hear it. You didn't actually water your garden. You watered the air above it. I know, that stings a bit, but those plants aren't dying of drought. They're literally dying of thirst in the very middle of a flood. This right here is a perfect illustration of something called hydrophobic soil. When standard potting soil or peat moss completely dries out, it doesn't just get thirsty. It actually becomes highly water repellent. It actively fights the water. So when you pour water over the top, it simply takes the path of least resistance, rushing straight down those shrunken gaps at the sides of the pot, while the center stays completely bone dry. You see water pouring out the bottom and think, great, I'm done. But your poor plant's roots haven't taken a single drink. So, what's the immediate, totally free fix for potted plants? It's simple. Completely stop top watering. Instead, you're going to use bottom watering. Just set your potted plant into a bucket with a few inches of water in it and walk away. If you watch closely, you'll actually see bubbles rising up to the surface. That is air being forcefully pushed out of those dry pockets as the water finally soaks in. The moment those bubbles stop, your plant is genuinely hydrated. You know, what's genuinely fascinating is that the most efficient way to water your garden isn't some fancy new tech at all. It auto-regulates, it doesn't require an app or a timer, and as researcher Dr. David Bainbridge pointed out back in 2001, it was actually written down in a Chinese agricultural bulletin more than 2,000 years ago. We're talking before Rome even had an emperor. We are talking about buried, unglazed clay pots. To put into perspective just how incredibly powerful this method is, you have to hear the numbers from a famous melon trial in India. Buried clay pots produced an amazing 25 tons per hectare, which is roughly 3/4 of what they got with traditional flood irrigation. But wait, listen to the water usage. They achieved that massive yield using just 2 centimeters of water, compared to a staggering 26 centimeters for flooding. That is less than 1/10 of the water to get a huge harvest. The best part? You can totally do this at home right now using those old, cracked terracotta pots fading away behind your garage. Because unglazed clay is porous, it relies entirely on physics. Dry soil has this enormous suction power. When the soil gets thirsty, it pulls water straight through those clay walls, literally molecule by molecule, exactly when the plant needs it. And when the soil is wet enough, the suction stops and the watering automatically stops. Just plug the bottom hole, bury the pot up to its neck, fill it with water, and pop a cover on top so mosquitoes can't get in. Boom, you're done. But listen, getting the water down to the roots, that's really only half the battle. You've got to keep it there. Bare soil in July acts exactly like a giant wick. According to a Cal Poly study, bare soil loses its moisture incredibly fast. But if you add just a 2-inch layer of mulch, it slashes that surface evaporation down to a mere 40% over 3 days. Now here is the absolute best detail when it comes to keeping your money in your wallet. Free mulch, stuff like wheat straw, grass clippings, or shredded leaves, works exactly as well as those expensive bagged wood chips. According to research from Washington State University, adding this organic layer can keep your soil an astonishing 18 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than bare ground. Guys, that's literally the difference between roots actively growing and roots completely shutting down in a panic from heat stress. Okay, but a quick warning before you go grabbing massive piles of free mulch from a local tree crew, you absolutely must check it for the invasive jumping worm. This pest is incredibly destructive and is now found in 38 states. They devour leaf litter 2 to 3 times faster than normal earthworms, totally wrecking your soil's structure and its ability to hold any moisture. Keep an eye out for soil that looks like loose coffee grounds, worms that violently thrash sideways like a snake when you disturb them, and a smooth, milky white wedding ring band around their bodies.
All right, let's shift gears to a super popular garden design that honestly might be secretly working against you, the raised bed. As the Iowa State University Extension bluntly warns, raised beds are basically just giant, exposed containers. They dry out way faster than in-ground beds and demand significantly more watering on your part.
Compare that exposed, super fast draining raised bed to an amazing 1,000-year-old Zuni farming technique from arid New Mexico called the waffle garden. Instead of piling soil up into the baking wind and sun, a waffle garden uses sunken squares surrounded by packed earth walls. When it rains or when you water it, every single drop gets trapped right inside that grid and goes straight down to the roots instead of sheeting off and running across the yard.
Now don't worry, you absolutely do not need to tear up your entire yard to use this wisdom. If you live in a dry climate or maybe you just have sandy soil, take 5 minutes today to build a low circular berm, just a little ring of soil about 3 to 4 inches high around your most important plants. You've just created a localized sunken bed. It's like a little moat that stops water from running off sideways and forces it straight down exactly where it belongs.
Section 1. Defeating the 3 water thieves: wind, the clock, and heat. Because here's the thing. Even if your soil structure is absolutely flawless, you still have to defeat 3 unseen thieves that steal your water right out from under you. To fight the wind, you don't actually want a solid wall. That just creates damaging turbulence. Use something porous, like an old wooden pallet, to gently slow the breeze down. Beat the clock by watering in the evening. As long as you're watering directly into the soil and not spraying the leaves, you'll avoid all those fungal diseases you get with night watering. And finally, you absolutely must respect the heat hiding inside your garden hose.
You have to hear this terrifying number. Water sitting perfectly still inside a sun-baked garden hose can reach anywhere between 130 and 190 degrees Fahrenheit. That is literally as hot as coffee straight out of the pot. It is hot enough to cause severe second-degree burns to a child, and it will instantly cook your poor plant's roots. Always run the hose out onto the driveway for 30 to 60 seconds until it runs cool before you start watering.
There's another really critical safety distinction that trips up a lot of gardeners, and it involves buried compost buckets. True compost tea is made from finished, mature compost, and it's totally safe. But the liquid that seeps out of raw, rotting kitchen scraps in a bucket, that's called leachate. Because it hasn't been safely processed by worms yet, it carries some pretty serious pathogen risks, like E. coli. Under organic standards, that leachate must be kept far, far away from your food crops for 90 to 120 days.
But hey, if you do it the right way, a buried worm tower is just a brilliant method to create aeration channels and massively improve your soil's water capacity. Just stick to the rules. Use only food-grade buckets, never use old toxic paint buckets, keep out fresh manure and seeded weeds because cold compost won't kill off pathogens or seeds. Make sure the bucket is shaded so you don't accidentally bake your worms alive in the sun, and for a completely free boost, pour in your cooled, unsalted leftover pasta water to add starches and minerals directly right into the soil. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to take a second and honestly evaluate your own routine. Is your daily shallow sprinkling just teaching your plant's roots to stay up in the dangerously hot top inch of the soil? Are your beautiful raised beds exposing your soil to those drying winds? Sometimes, our very best intentions are actually training our gardens to fail.
Because at the end of the day, the absolute most successful gardeners out there aren't the ones who just haul the most buckets of water out into the blistering heat. No, they are the ones who get their hands dirty. They push their fingers 3 inches down into the earth, find out exactly where the invisible leaks are happening, and they stop them one by one. So, are you ready to find out what's really happening beneath the surface of your garden?